then Mildura hasn't had a case for something like 5 months. They're obviously a long way from a lot of the hotspots that have been a real concern. Would you ever consider looking to put them outside of Victoria's restrictions?
Let me go back to this. This has been a point that's been of some concern all week. If we had been asking regional Victoria to wait 6 or 8 weeks to move as one, then we wouldn't have done that. We would have said, right, we're going to have 6 or 8 zones. We're going to have to divide regional Victoria up. But because we knew that if we stayed the course and we stuck to the strategy, there was every chance that within 2 weeks of having announced the roadmap, middle of next week, it'll be even sooner than that, we could get to that point where there were less than 5 cases and no community transmission, no mystery cases. We thought it was best not to divide regional Victoria up, have people barely acquainted with the rules that applied to their local zone, only to have the numbers such that every regional Victorian could move beyond those rules. If it was 6 or 8 weeks, it would have been a different story, but it's not. There's every chance. In fact, it is increasingly likely. I'd call it if I could, but I don't know what will come in tomorrow or the next day. But by the middle of next week, indeed early next week, I think that regional Victoria is going to be able to take those steps. And that means all of regional Victoria moves as one, and there's no need to do subsets, there's no need to do zones. And there are some very practical issues with that, around how do you police those roadblocks and all those sorts of things. It's not like it's an 8-week journey. It might only be 8 or 10 days. We'll just have to wait and see how the numbers unfold over the next couple.
Premier, you mentioned that it's not an academic, we're in a real setting, not an academic setting.
We are.
That modelling obviously has to be done in an academic setting. So what's the process for them taking that information and turning that into what we're living through now? Like what's the process for taking the information they're giving you and making these decisions?
Well, they provide their modelling to the public health team. The public health team then sit down with us, sit down with me, ministers, senior officials, and work through how do we get the most economic benefit for the lowest public health risk. So that's why there's, if you asked a public health official, should we have 101,000 people going back to work, the answer would probably be no, because that would be an absolute. But they know, they're practical people. They are doing, as we are, the very best we can to strike that difficult balance. Lowest public health risk, highest economic return, as well as some things that are not financial, for instance. So trying to have people being able to connect singles bubbles, family bubbles, those sorts of things. They're very difficult judgments, but the public health team use all the inputs they have. They play a part in helping the modellers to try and consider as many variables as possible, and then it kind of works up from there. And there'll be lots of different options, and there'll have to be some very fine judgments made. There have already been, and there will continue to be, when it comes to, for instance, the announcements I've made today about pet grooming from an animal welfare point of view, and beauty and personal services being aligned with hairdressing. That's not quite as simple as it seems. I know there's been people sitting looking at that in some detail for quite some time, quite a few days, in order to have confidence that we could make that announcement.